One of the things to note is that now that we've got our particles divided into states and managing their strand length and size, we can also note that when we copy the strand trails compounds, those are also being executed into port 0 and port 1. When I double click on each of them, the number of segments is set to 30, but with the particles in state 0, I can control my length by using the max number of segments slider. I can of course combine that with the get strand length and multiplying factor before setting the data back. So I controlled the number of strand segments and the length of those segments, or the spacing of those segments along the length of the strand trail. And I can do the same thing for the strand trails in state 1 as well. With the particles in state 1, I could reduce the number of segments to 0, so all we have are points and nothing more. So it's nice to be able to control that. As well, if we have a look at the render, I can see the particles emitting as a splash, but I can also go into the strand size attribute that I've set, and this is for the particles in state 1, so we're in this section of the branch here. I can get the particle size, strand size, and multiply that. So if I want the strands to be a little thicker for shading purposes, I could go in and thicken them up now. And if we have a look, I've got a much thicker particle. So again, I'll get back to frame 75. So I'll set it back to to a factor of 1. So we can do an image compare. And I'll go back to frame 0 and then back to frame 75. So I'm just going to let everything simulate up again, and you can actually see on the size where it's 1 versus 75, or versus a factor of 1 versus a factor of 5. So I have a lot more control when I have size on my particles. So if I have a look at the particles in the air, you'll notice that they still retain their designated size. If I was to go to the size attribute in state 0, so getting the strand size and multiplying it by a scalar factor here, my strand size, if I wanted to make even thinner particles, very, very fine grain, I could set the strand size down to, say, 0.5. And if I do an image compare here, again, let's just do something like this. On frame 75, do an image compare, move back to frame 1, and then to frame 75 again. We get a much thinner look to our particles. So again, one of the neat features of dealing with states and execution in the ice tree. I might want to go in and comment this quickly.